In a world saturated with information, discerning fact from fiction is more critical than ever. Staying informed about current events is not just about knowledge, it's about empowerment. When we understand the events shaping our world, we become more engaged citizens, better equipped to make informed decisions. Whether it's the outcome of an election, the ramifications of a policy change, or the unfolding of an international crisis, news empowers us to navigate our complex world. Here at Newscope, we are committed to delivering accurate, unbiased, and insightful news coverage to empower you, our viewers. We believe that a well-informed public is essential for a thriving democracy. Our team of dedicated journalists works tirelessly to bring you the most important stories from around the globe, providing context and analysis to help you make sense of it all. Tonight we delve into a series of critical events unfolding both domestically and internationally. From the halls of Congress to the streets of Bucharest, we'll cover the stories shaping our world. First, we dissect the ongoing debate over government funding in the United States. With a potential government shutdown looming, we'll examine the sticking points and potential consequences. Next, we shift our attention to the Middle East, where controversial statements from Israeli officials regarding Gaza have sparked international concern. We'll analyze the geopolitical implications and potential for further unrest. Then, we travel to Romania, where the upcoming elections have been thrown into turmoil following a ban on a far-right candidate. We'll examine the implications for Romanian politics and the rise of far-right movements in Europe. We begin tonight with a developing story in Washington, D.C., where lawmakers are locked in a tense battle over government funding. With a midnight deadline fast approaching, the threat of a government shutdown looms large. Both the House and the Senate are currently in session, scrambling to reach a compromise before the clock runs out. At the heart of the debate is a disagreement between Democrats and Republicans over spending priorities. Democrats are pushing for increased funding for social programs and environmental protection, while Republicans are demanding stricter fiscal responsibility and cuts to what they deem as wasteful spending. As the hours tick by, the pressure intensifies on both sides to find common ground and avert a potentially disastrous government shutdown. Several key issues have emerged as major sticking points in the negotiations. One of the most contentious points is funding for a proposed expansion of healthcare coverage. Democrats argue that expanding access to affordable healthcare is essential, while Republicans counter that the proposed plan is too costly and would lead to higher taxes. Another major point of contention is funding for border security. Republicans are pushing for increased funding for border wall construction and additional border patrol agents. Democrats, however, argue that the focus should be on comprehensive immigration reform, and that the president's demands for a border wall are unreasonable and ineffective. Section 3. Consequences of inaction. The potential for a government shutdown. If lawmakers fail to reach an agreement by the midnight deadline, the federal government will partially shut down. This would mean that many government agencies would be forced to suspend non-essential operations. Hundreds of thousands of federal employees would be furloughed, meaning they would be placed on temporary unpaid leave. National parks and museums would close, and many government services would be disrupted or halted entirely. The economic consequences of a government shutdown could be significant. A prolonged shutdown would slow economic growth, disrupt financial markets, and erode consumer confidence. The longer the shutdown lasts, the more severe the consequences would be for both the government and the American people. Section 4. Voices from the Hill. Perspectives on the impasse. To get a sense of the mood on Capitol Hill, our reporters have been speaking with lawmakers from both sides of the aisle. Democrats remain hopeful that a deal can be reached, but stress that they are unwilling to compromise on their core principles. Republicans, meanwhile, are equally adamant that they will not back down from their demands for fiscal responsibility. As the clock ticks down, the rhetoric on both sides is becoming increasingly heated, raising concerns that a compromise may be out of reach. Section 1. A contentious proposal, the call for Gaza emigration. Turning our attention now to the Middle East. where a highly controversial proposal from Israeli officials regarding the Gaza Strip has ignited international condemnation and fueled existing tensions in the region.
The proposal, which calls for the mass emigration of Palestinians from Gaza, has been met with outrage from Palestinian leaders and human rights groups who denounce it as a blatant attempt at ethnic cleansing.
The proposal has also sparked fierce debate within Israel, with some right-wing politicians defending it as a necessary measure to ensure Israel's security, while others criticize it as both morally reprehensible and logistically impossible.
At the heart of the controversy is the ongoing humanitarian crisis in Gaza, which has been under Israeli blockade for over a decade, resulting in widespread poverty, unemployment, and a lack of basic necessities. Section 2. Fueling the fire. Controversial statements spark outrage.
Further exacerbating the situation are recent statements made by prominent Israeli officials, including a cabinet minister who suggested that the only solution for Gaza is to empty it of Gazans.
These inflammatory remarks have drawn sharp criticism from the international community, with many accusing Israel of inciting violence and further jeopardizing the prospects for peace.
Palestinian officials have condemned the statements as racist and dangerous, arguing that they reflect a broader Israeli agenda to displace Palestinians and annex their land.
The United Nations has also expressed deep concern, warning that such rhetoric could have dire consequences for the already volatile situation. Section 3. International condemnation. The world reacts to Israel's stance.
The international community has roundly condemned the Israeli proposal and the incendiary rhetoric surrounding it. The European Union has called for a de-escalation of tensions and urged Israel to reconsider its stance.
The United States, a staunch ally of Israel, has also expressed reservations about the proposal, calling for a negotiated solution that respects the rights of both Israelis and Palestinians.
Human rights organizations have been particularly vocal in their criticism, accusing Israel of violating international law and committing human rights abuses.
Amnesty International has called for an end to the blockade of Gaza and urged the international community to hold Israel accountable for its actions. Section 4. The future of Gaza. Uncertainty and the search for a solution.
The controversial proposal for Gaza emigration has thrust the issue of the Gaza Strip back into the international spotlight, highlighting the urgent need for a just and lasting solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
As tensions continue to simmer, the future of Gaza remains uncertain. The international community faces the daunting task of finding a path forward that addresses the legitimate security concerns of Israel, while also upholding the human rights of Palestinians.
Finding a resolution to this complex and deeply rooted conflict will require dialogue, compromise, and a commitment to peace from all parties involved.
Whether a peaceful solution can be achieved remains to be seen, but the stakes could not be higher for the people of Gaza and the stability of the entire region.
Shifting our focus to Europe, we turn to Romania, where the upcoming presidential elections have been thrown into disarray. The country's constitutional court has upheld a ban on far-right figure Călin Georgescu from running for office.
The court's decision, which cites Georgescu's inflammatory rhetoric and incitement to hatred, has sparked a wave of reactions across the political spectrum. Supporters of the ban argue that it is a necessary measure to protect democracy and prevent the rise of extremism.
Georgescu, a controversial figure known for his nationalist and anti-immigration views, has denounced the ban as a politically motivated attack on his candidacy. He maintains that he represents the voice of the people and that the Romanian people have been silenced.
The ban has left his far-right party scrambling to find a replacement candidate just weeks before the election, throwing their strategy into disarray and leaving a void in the political landscape.
Călin Georgescu's political career has been marked by controversy. He first gained notoriety for his fiery speeches that often targeted minorities, immigrants, and those he deemed as enemies of the Romanian people.
His rhetoric, often laced with nationalist and xenophobic sentiment, resonated with a segment of the population disillusioned with traditional politics and fueled by economic anxieties and cultural fears.
Despite facing criticism and accusations of inciting hatred, Georgescu's popularity continued to grow. He skillfully tapped into a vein of discontent, presenting himself as a strongman who would restore Romania to its former glory.
His message, amplified by social media and a network of dedicated followers, found fertile ground in a country grappling with corruption, economic inequality, and a sense of lost national identity.
The ban on Georgescu's candidacy has sent shockwaves through Romanian politics, leaving many wondering how this will impact the upcoming elections. Some analysts believe this will benefit more moderate candidates, while others fear it could backfire.
There are concerns that the ban could further galvanize Georgescu's supporters, who may view the court's decision as an attempt to silence their chosen leader. This could potentially lead to an increase in support for far-right parties.
The Romanian government now faces the challenge of ensuring a fair and democratic election, while also addressing the underlying social and economic issues that have fueled the rise of far-right sentiment in the country.
The international community will be closely watching how the situation unfolds in Romania, as it could have implications for the broader fight against far-right extremism in Europe and beyond. Section 4. The broader context, far-right influence in Europe. The situation in Romania is not an isolated incident. Across Europe, far-right parties and movements have been gaining ground, capitalizing on anxieties over immigration, economic inequality, and a perceived loss of national identity.
From France and Germany to Hungary and Poland, far-right parties have made significant electoral gains in recent years, challenging the established political order and pushing the boundaries of acceptable discourse.
The rise of these movements poses a challenge to democratic values and institutions, as they often espouse nationalist, xenophobic, and authoritarian views.
The international community must remain vigilant in combating the spread of far-right ideology and work to address the root causes that fuel its rise, such as social inequality, discrimination, and political polarization.
Section 1. Education under fire, deep cuts threaten U.S. schools. In a move that has sent shockwaves through the American education system, the Department of Education has announced sweeping budget cuts that will have a profound impact on schools across the nation.
The proposed cuts, which target a wide range of programs and initiatives, have drawn immediate and fierce condemnation from educators, parents, and policymakers who warn of dire consequences for students and the future of American education.
The cuts come at a time when public education in the United States is already facing significant challenges, including underfunding, teacher shortages, and persistent achievement gaps.
Critics argue that these cuts will only exacerbate these problems, leading to larger class sizes, fewer resources for students, and a decline in the quality of education overall.
The Department of Education's budget cuts will have immediate and far-reaching consequences for schools across the country. Thousands of teachers and staff members are facing layoffs, and many essential programs are on the chopping block.
Among the programs slated for elimination or significant reductions are those that support early childhood education, after-school programs, teacher training, and special education services.
Schools in low-income communities, which often rely heavily on federal funding, are expected to be hit particularly hard by the cuts. These schools often serve students facing the greatest challenges, and the loss of funding could have devastating consequences.
The cuts are also raising concerns about the future of higher education, as funding for student aid programs and research grants is also being reduced.
The long-term implications of these education cuts are profound. Investing in education is not just about providing students with the skills they need to succeed in the workforce. It's about investing in the future of our nation.
A well-educated citizenry is essential for a thriving democracy and a strong economy. When we shortchange education, we shortchange our future.
Cutting funding for education will likely lead to a less educated workforce, which could have serious consequences for our nation's economic competitiveness in the global marketplace.
Furthermore, neglecting education can perpetuate cycles of poverty and inequality, undermining social mobility and threatening the fabric of our society.
The Department of Education's budget cuts have been met with a wave of opposition from educators, parents, students, and community leaders across the country.
Teachers' unions have vowed to fight the cuts, arguing that they will devastate public education and harm students. Parents are expressing deep concern about the impact on their children's education.
Students are organizing protests and rallies demanding that their voices be heard and that their education be protected. They argue that investing in education is investing in their future.
The fight over education funding is a battle for the soul of America. It's a battle between those who believe in investing in our children's future and those who would balance the budget on the backs of our students. From the halls of Congress to the streets of Bucharest, from classrooms in America to the heart of the Middle East, the events we've covered tonight underscore the interconnected nature of our world. Understanding these events, however complex or distant they may seem, is not just about accumulating knowledge. It's about equipping ourselves to be engaged citizens.
In a world often awash in misinformation and competing narratives, staying informed requires vigilance, critical thinking, and a commitment to seeking out reliable sources. It demands that we question, analyze, and engage with the information we encounter.
Here at Newscope, we remain committed to providing you with the news and analysis you need to navigate these complex times. We believe that a well-informed public is the cornerstone of a functioning democracy and a just society.
Thank you for joining us tonight. Subscribe to our channel for more updates. This is Newscope, keeping you informed.